Hey, this is Adam. Just wanted to pop on here before we started today's conversation and tell you about a really exciting event that we're going to be a part of this fall, October 6th at Bound Bookshop in York, Pennsylvania. We are so excited to be participating in the book launch for Madison Tyler Nelson's Portrait of a Haunting. This is just an incredible book that I think so many people are going to really love and enjoy. So we are so excited, one, to have had a conversation with her that you'll hear on the pod, but also in person being part of the book launch on release day at Bound Bookshop in York. Tickets are free at boundbookshop.com, and we hope to see all of our friends in the mid Atlantic area to come celebrate this really special book. All right, on to the conversation. Welcome back to Horrifically Well Read, Bled, and Said. We are so excited today to be talking to author Henry Corrigan, author of Party of a Lifetime, which is out now for your reading pleasure. Welcome, Henry, to the show.
Thank you so very much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while, so thank you. I love the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, the imagery on the front of your book is one that I think really will draw the reader in.
Yeah.
And without further ado, how would you set up and explain your book, and to our listeners?
Absolutely. I mean, my sales pitch that I always give when I'm at a signing or an event is that it's a queer supernatural horror novel. It's about four friends who reunite after high school to have the prom that could have been, but they end up getting dragged down a literal highway to hell. The again, the book only just came out in June, but it's been garnering some wonderful reviews. My favorite that I've gotten so far, however, is 5 stars, utterly disgusting.
As a horror author, you can't hope for better than that, can you?
Exactly, exactly. And thank you also for pointing out the cover as well. My publisher actually did part of it to the van, as you can see, was actually her conception and her working on it. And then the tentacle coming up, she said, "No, I don't have that kind of work in my repertoire." So she hired a local comic book artist to be able to handle that. And
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So
That
it's
makes
been yeah,
sense why it drugged me in then because it definitely feels that like
Kinetic,
dramatic
yeah.
type of like, yeah,
Mhm.
I love
hmm
that. So
yeah.
I'm
No, it
glad
was
that you shared that we are allowed to talk about the literal highway to hell because I was kind of like, how do I dance around this? And now
Yeah.
we can talk about some of the things that are happening in hell.
I love that you got the blue bomb on the front there.
yes,
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 I
yes.
think any
which
child
is
of
the van.
yes,
hmm
any child
Yeah.
of the '80s and '90s probably spent some time either in a Econoline or Windstar or one of
Yeah.
those,
Yep,
Yep, yep.
sure
Oh,
did.
the Blue Bomb was actually a nickname that we had for a car, not a van, but a car that we had when we were growing up, and it was the kinda car that it was so beat to shit. It was the kinda car, like, as you're driving, you can see the white lines through the floor of the car because the floor had corroded so much
Oh
that
my god!
you could see the road through the floor. So, yeah, the
Wow.
Blue Bomb was
it's like a
something that's
Flintstone car where you're
Ah!
yeah.
watching the yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So the Blue Bomb
okay,
was
well,
something my family
I'm
anyway had when I was in so I
jeez.
don't remember this car very well, but I just know the stories, so I just remember this so well. So that was, so I had to include it when I really touched on Becca, my main female and main character when I really touched it when and finally understood that she is a mechanic. So it felt like something that I really just had to include. So
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that, whether it's the family car or whether it's like your first car as a teenager, kind of like, it is here,
mhm.
living your life dangerously, not knowing whether the car is actually gonna get you wherever it is you're going
Yep,
is kind of
yep.
Yes.
part of the
Yes.
quintessential experience, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely, yes. No.
My parents were, like, staunchly against a car payment, and so we always had cars that, like, my dad was fixing and were like, because shit would happen, right? And then
Mhm,
eventually, once I was in 7th grade, they were like, "You know what? We're gonna bite the bullet and we're gonna get a Windstar." And I
mhm,
remember, but we still had the other, like, crappy cars, and I remember my dad was like, "I'll take you to see who your teacher is post it up, but I need to see if this big ass station wagon is working and firing right, and I'm only taking you in that." And I was like, "But we have a Windstar, like, we have a brand new car. I gotta go to middle school for the first fucking time." But I was, like, so desperate, and I was like, "Drop me off, like, a block away, go test the
Mhm.
car." I had no self. I was like, "Just come on. I don't wanna be seen in this," you know? It was like but, I could hear the car coming for the way that tink, 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 the way the tires sounded and everything, so I wasn't like, "Man, am I left
Yes.
behind? I wonder if my parents are gonna pick me up," because it's like you could hear it coming.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes
Yeah.
it was like that Uncle Buck, part the movie where, like, it has the back where it
Backfire? Oh,
Yes.
It's been
yeah.
a long time since I've seen it. I don't remember it all. The only thing I really
Well
remember from Uncle Buck was just him using the snow shovel to flip the pancakes. That's
well,
all I
that is
remember from
one
Uncle
of the
Buck.
most iconic. The other one being the his car when he would shut off, it was an incredibly loud backfire. It was also a bomb, but he loved it.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love how, Becca is, training to be a mechanic herself,
Wow.
and that's kind of how her and her dad in the book kind of bond over that.
Mhm.
So that
Fixing
was
up
a
the bomb.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that was a
Mhm.
really cool, thing, and again, it's sort of I one thing that I love, and we'll talk about this, as we go through, is how often all of the 4 sort of main characters buck against whether it's gender, sexuality norms, any of that kind of stuff. They refuse to be stereotyped in so many ways, and I think that's right there from the beginning when, she's like a fucking diesel mechanic, which is awesome.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Becca is having I love Becca, and and the the one thing that I wanted to be very, very careful with when dealing with so many different multiple and disparate characters, even though they're all friends, is one of the things that I've found with other works of fiction is that you end up falling more in love with the side characters than you do with the main character. Like the main character is just not as interesting as some of the other characters. I've run into that in other books. So I really wanted Becca to be someone who could stand on her own, someone
She
different,
does.
someone who, yeah, thank you. I'm glad that
Mhm.
really came across. I was honestly terrified that she was going to get somehow my through line through this book and what's going to be the other books that follow would get lost somehow. So I'm glad that she comes across so well. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, I think definitely there probably is in a lot of books that main character becomes almost like just that stand-in narrator that's kind of describing what's happening while everyone else gets the good lines and the
Mhm.
funny parts and stuff. So absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, Becca is a very interesting character,
Yeah.
and
She's a very she's much more like, she's an abused kid. What
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily come across like that, but as you tackle the family dynamic in this book, dad's wonderfully supportive. Mom is quite literally like, just one of the mother she's
uh,
gotta be a mother that, these books of, like, you know,
well,
what
I
they
love
write
the
about inappropriate mothers, like, it's a
yeah.
Becca's mom.
Well, I love the fact that, like, so often we talk about, like, influencers and influencer culture, and we're
Mhm.
generally talking about, if not millennial, usually like a Gen Z, kind of person. And so the
Mhm.
fact that, like, Becca's mother is trying to do that, and succeeding at it
Yeah.
is very funny because it's like it's a very 2026 thing that your essential midlife crisis is to be an Instagram influencer, right?
Yeah.
And I said this offline, but I'm gonna say it again. You have a great laugh so that our listeners can hear that, like,
Thank you very
this
much.
adds to
Thank
it.
you.
So fun.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really I appreciate that. Thank you. The For as out of the box as Irene is the mother, Becca's mom is I loved writing her as well. And the funny thing is that she actually when I first wrote the first draft of this book, she really wasn't in the novel very much at all.
Interesting.
My idea had been to be that this would be more of a Mean Girls type of thing. She was dealing
Uh-huh.
with like her old bully from high school. So as I really dug into the book and I went back and I started writing and adding and like I said, I can't make this work without seriously bogging down the novel with all kinds of like flashbacks and stuff like that. So how can I really keep the maliciousness, but make it much more personal and still read well, and that was what I really came up with,
Right.
and I
Well
the yeah, no, go for it, please.
well, I was gonna say, speaking of which, your format of your novel so that it doesn't feel bogged down is set up really unique. So you start out with like a chapter that is just like, what in the actual fuck is going on here?
Somebody
And
is setting up clearly demonic revenge on
yes,
Mhm.
and
people,
they're like,
Yeah.
"I want
Yeah.
these people revenge," and they're like,
and
"Alright,
they
I'll"
wanna be there for it,
yep,
you
they're
know?
like,
Yeah.
"I
So
wanna
Yeah.
watch," and so we
yeah.
don't know who that is. Then we
Mhm.
go in and we start meeting the character. About 50% of the way through, literal, like
Well, like 25.
no, I was gonna say like 40%, the shit just starts, like, going fucking crazy.
Well, it's funny because it's like,
And then wait, hold on, and then eventually, like, we go back in time
yeah.
to some things, and then we go forward in time, and it does
Mhm.
keep your, like, interest level for that way because it's very it's not linear, but it's not confusing.
No. Yeah, I try to keep it as especially when it comes to, differing timelines, is keep it as simple as I can, because if I start losing the plot in my head, if I start losing interest or if I start, being confused myself, then it's a pretty clear indicator that the audience or the reader is going to be very is gonna I'm gonna lose them somewhere along the way. So,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
my mother and still has a phrase that she lives by. It's the KISS method. I think a lot of us, at least in the 90s, and 80s and
Right.
90s growing up, is keep it simple, stupid. So that was the acronym at least that I grew up with. So
Which then
that's
changed to keep it simple, sweetheart, and I'm like, "No, no, it's stupid. Everybody knows it's stupid."
yeah, yeah. So try to make things a little bit more palatable as you get older, or like change things for the next generation.
Mhm.
Yeah, but we carry things with us throughout the course of our lives. And for Irene, for the mother, I think the one of the best compliments that I've gotten this from a number of people is, I want to thank you. But I want to ask, from readers who've said, I want to thank you, but I want to ask you, how do you know my mother? It's
Oh my god, Henry, I'm so glad you brought that up because I went out of my read it separately, like it fit it and I finished a little after him and I was like, "So, how are you feeling after that?" I was like, "Are you, feeling, were you feeling like you're reading about your mother, Adam?"
mm,
That is so many things, so many moments of this book, I was like, "Oh, man, yep, I know exactly." And, it's funny because the one thing about Irene is that she really thinks she's the hero, right? Like, in
yes.
terms of, like, the way that she treats the people around her, she feels like she's being wronged,
She is
you
a
know.
Hmm.
first of all, let me just add this for the listeners as you talk about this, and
Yeah,
it is she Irene is a complete narcissist.
yeah,
I
Hmm.
mean, it's one of
Yeah.
those things where you're like, "How in the hell are you actually a mother? Like, how did you ever birth something? This must have been by accident, not out of love." And, because I don't know how you like, you don't resemble any of the features of being a mother, and
Right.
yet she does not see that, which
mhm,
is
Yeah.
brings me back to your mother, Adam.
yeah, very
Mm.
similar to that.
Yeah.
But it's such a great way to sort of open the book, I like the way that it's kind of we start with Becca, her dad and mom, and then we kind of add in the characters, one at a time kind of from there. But it's a really good way to see, how your lead character thinks and the ticks and, some of the baggage that Becca's bringing into the experience that we get into later
Hmm.
But she's
when
so polite to her mom, despite the fact that her mom is a total dick.
Yeah.
She's tolerates her at
Hmm.
the beginning,
and I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, even like her
even at the
dad
end.
considering is kinder than he probably should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, she just it just is a very great way, and it's funny because like Rebecca said, like essentially these like you said also they're trying to recreate this prom that they didn't get to have, and we don't know exactly what happened, but we do know prom was a disaster in some kind of
Hmm.
way,
Yeah.
and they're trying to sort of like recreate that magic after the fact. And it's funny because it's almost like we start out with like a teenage kind of like rom-com sex comedy kind of thing,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, like you said, it's like, No, actually, you're in a Lovecraftian In the Mouth of Madness. This is, you take
Mhm.
that sort of right turn into a horror story.
Mm.
So I just wanted to see, like, when this concept, like, what was it that kind of germinated this concept in your head? What were you influenced by in sort of like bringing this journey, which I'm very excited also because you did just say that the books that follow.
Yes, that
Mhm.
was one
Yeah.
of our
So
questions.
anyone
Yes.
that reads this
Yes.
book is going to be asking that
Yeah,
question.
because it's
Yes.
perfectly set up.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yes.
so like, where did this come from?
Cabin in the Woods is is a favorite of mine. It's something that I've watched a number of times, and I really loved how updated and smart the film was in terms of looking at modern day characters and the tropes of horror. But the thing that
Mhm.
really stuck to me and the way and as the story started coming together was the idea of rites of passage. Like the prom is supposed to be this big like rite of passage, and it's the big party that you have when you make it through all the things that you go through in high school, both things that people talk about and things that people don't talk about. And they the problem with rites of passage is that they often mean more to the people that are watching them than the people who are actually participating in them. So it means more
Yeah.
to the
So
previous
true.
generation. Yeah, it means more to the previous generation. It's like, I did this, this was this big thing. My daughter's now this age. I want her to go through with this now.
Mhm.
And
Right?
yeah, and often they don't take into account how the next generation either just doesn't have the same values or
Mm.
doesn't have the same values in
Attachment?
turn. Yeah,
Yeah.
the same attachment, thank you very much, yes. The same attachment and the same values of what it is that they really are interested in. So, I
Mhm.
mean, look, I actually went to 2 proms. I went to a junior prom and I went to no, actually, I went to a prom when I was a junior. I was invited by a senior, and then I went to my own prom, and I had a wonderful time. So, but the I've often heard so many people who talk about that night and like the way things went wrong, the way things just didn't go the way that they planned, how much preparation they went into it, how much their
Yes.
parents really talked about so much of it and everything. So that
So
was
much
the
so much
crux of it.
pressure in one
It
evening.
is. Yes, exactly. There is so much pressure that's built around this one evening. And there's also a kind of hypocrisy around it is the fact that you're supposed to celebrate the fact that not that you're graduating, you're moving on to like your adult portion of your life. But
Mhm.
honestly, it feels more like you're being told to celebrate the fact that you survived.
Yeah.
So, because I don't know about you
Wow.
guys, but high
Never really
school
thought about it like that, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but high school was not fun for me. I know other people who've said that middle school was worse for them than high school. Fine, that's fine. My experience, high school was not fun. And it just feels like you're being told that you have to get dressed up and do all these things just to prove that, you not earned to be here, but the fact that, you were, I guess, strong enough or tough enough or whatever to make it here. And now, this is your hurrah before you go off to become whatever it is that you want to become. So, yeah, that it's the hypocrisy, the pressure I wanted to talk about, and how a lot of the expectations that people hinge on this can be very,
Yeah.
very revealing, especially when people lose their temper all in one night. So,
Well, we
yeah.
just had, we've had 3 exchange students, but our Francesca just went home, and so she was a senior this year, and, you know, it was like, "Okay, I have to get the perfect dress. Will you take me out here? Can we get the shoes?" Okay. All the timing, all the preparation, all this, whatever, the meals ahead of time, and we had a great time doing it, and then she was just like, "This prom kinda sucks." Like, everybody they were like, "Do you wanna come get me in, like, an hour?" And I was like, "I mean, yeah, it's no problem, but are you fucking kidding me?" Like,
Well,
and
Yeah.
it's like, that's where it was, is like, it just wasn't fun, like, it wasn't cool for
and maybe like for some people, like
that's what it might have
it's
been
kind of like you
fine.
said, like
Well,
it depends on the people's.
that's my point.
Well, it depends on your experience with like high school, but I also feel like okay, this is the celebration for surviving it. and you,
Mhm.
by the way, celebrate with a bunch of people that you probably might not even like, or
Exactly.
where
That's
the
yes, yes.
reason where the
That you're
Mhm.
reason that it
surviving.
was such a hard
Yes.
And
time
I think that's why she
Yes.
had such
why.
a boring time because it was kinda isolating for her and, like, okay, you know? But for some
Mhm.
people, I'm sure they had the best night because, if you, peaked in high school and had the best time,
Yeah.
then it probably was great.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost like, when you think about, like, maybe, like, sports parents and stuff like that
Oh
when
my
they're
god.
so, whatever,
I
it's
went
like.
to high school here and I played sports on this team. Sometimes they live really vicariously.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we'll go, like, since we have kids that are in that age, sometimes we'll go to, like, football games with them and stuff, and we'll see,
God.
people that don't have kids there and went there, graduated 30 years ago, and they go to every football game still, and it's just like
Yeah.
that's part of their life. But
Mhm.
like it's almost even worse, because prom, instead of it being 4 years of games, it's one night where like the parent is like, I'm gonna relive this, I'm gonna live vicariously through you,
Did you
and it's
guys
just.
take the prom promise?
What is that?
What do you
No,
mean,
I
what is
don't
that?
know.
You guys don't know
No.
what that is?
I didn't go to
No.
prom. Yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
okay, yeah, you did. You went with your friends.
I went to someone else, I didn't go to my prom.
I didn't say you were prom.
okay.
You went
Yeah.
like you were like Henry, you got invited to someone else's.
Yeah, but it was, like, a different
Yeah.
school district, like,
Yeah.
completely. It
Well,
was more like going to a shitty wedding because I don't know anyone there, the music
Yeah.
sucks, the food
Mhm.
sucks,
but you were with your friends.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it was we went there to cause problems, like, let's be
Ah!
honest, like, so and
To get the fuckest uppest. Okay, well, the prom promise is when you promise to not have sex on
Oh, I thought it was
prom
drinking or
night.
something maybe, yeah.
It's like,
Okay.
let's not I think it probably
That
includes
is some
that
purity
too.
culture, like, God, that the
Where
'90s
I'm
and
at
early
yeah,
2000s, man,
exactly, and I was like, "What?"
that was that time, wasn't it?
It was drinking
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
also the purity stuff, but it was both, yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Well, that was the one thing, even, like, when I was in a big city, like, everyone talked about how many people, like, fucking die in a car crash on prom, like,
they did
that
that,
was,
they
like.
brought in the
Mhm.
fucked up car
Yeah, they would bring
where they're
someone
Mhm.
like,
in
"Here, let
and
me show
show,
you the
like,
crash."
videos of, like, "Hey, you could have the best night of your life, and then you'll die," and it's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like
Because again, we put so much pressure and expectation on things.
yeah,
And it's often that the expectations that people have, parents have, and teachers have often matter more than the people themselves, the kids themselves. And, you see that in Becca, you see that in other kids, in the other characters as well as like, with Kyle, he
mhm,
was, he's, yeah, Kyle is as close to being like the big strapping, not prom king. He's not a prom king, but he's the. I think he would be the guy that if you saw him on the stage as prom king, you'd be like, yeah, I see that. That can track. Yeah, all right.
mhm,
So tall, strapping, handsome, stuff like that. And for him to come out of the closet, especially after all the years that he had been with Becca, and everything like that, his
Yes,
family disowned him. So
yes.
the yeah, and that's one of the things that I find so frightening and so fascinating about people is what we value. And and it turns out that a lot of people value their expectations more than they value the people themselves.
what a great point.
That's a
Yeah.
that's
So
a therapy moment right there, that's
yeah,
why I like
definitely.
this show, 'cause that's the truth of it, I
That
mean, that's
yeah.
putting some work in there, and I think there's some healing in that.
I think it's
Yeah.
also, like, the expectation, like you said, for a 17, 18-year-old to understand the weight of the moment that they're in, like, at the
Mhm.
time that
Mhm.
it's happening.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see a lot of videos and things where it's like you never realize it's the last time you're gonna pick up your kid, and hold them.
Mhm.
It's like you never realize it's the last time you're gonna hang out with this group of friends and all that kinda stuff. And I think, like, that assumption, for someone that's 17 and 18, like,
Ouch.
prom night, they expect to hang out with those people again the
They
next day
do.
and the next week
Mhm.
and the next month and all those things,
Mhm.
and
It's
and
never gonna end.
and even if it's,
Yeah.
like, not the case, like, to say, like, understand the weight of what's happening right now. 1, where's the fun in that,
Yeah.
And then 2, it's like you're telling someone with a not a fully developed brain to sort of understand that they're going through a major life event, and I don't think that even when you're older, like, you're either just trying to get through it, you're just trying
Mhm.
to enjoy, where you're at,
Mhm.
and so, like, even, like, graduation, like, the ceremony itself, it's like, a mixture of incredible boredom and, like,
Yes! Yeah.
okay, I am excited and, like, this is great and everything, but again, who is that for? Like, you've
Yeah.
done all the work already, like, do you wanna hear your principal and the superintendent and whatever, like, speaker they've
Wax
had
poetic and
there?
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and
No.
even the valedictorian, like, I don't no offense to any valedictorians if you were one, but it's
Mhm.
like, are you generally, like, I didn't know like, I'd probably talked to the valedictorian 3 times in my 4 years that I was there. It's
Yeah.
like, your experience was not mine. Like,
No.
it's like
No.
so it's just it's like you said, like, it's a really interesting thing, and that's why I love that these characters kind of these 4 friends decided, "We're gonna do it our way," and it doesn't go very well, but
No.
the idea of what they're doing is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because yeah, they wanted to do it their way. They wanted to do something that they would actually care about, and was
Mhm.
just simple and low key. Get away from the parents, not do anything like crazy. But just go out, have a good time at the beach, and just enjoy each other. Yeah, you sneak like some drinks or whatever in there. You just try to enjoy yourself. Do all the same like crazy mistakes that a lot of kids made in other generations. You want to be able to
Mhm.
have that time together.
Right.
And yeah, and that's
They
also
spent
just
a lot of time, like, setting up how close they all are you set up, like, just them really vibing together
It's a
and, like
really, like,
mhm.
lived-in relationship, like,
yes.
Yeah.
as the
Yeah,
book,
it is.
as
Yeah.
goes on
Yep.
neat, and I think
Yeah.
you can kinda see yourself what what you do and don't have in common with the characters. It's real easy to see, like, your friend group or how you interact with those people, especially at that age, in the
Mhm.
way that they kind of interact and joke with each other, and even when shit hits the fan, continuing those kind of
They're
relationships in the
really
way that they
decent
are is really cool.
friendships, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the kind of friendships that you would see in, like just as, like, an example, would be, like, the Stranger Things type of friendships where they're, like,
Mhm.
deeply committed
Mhm.
to one another in
Mhm.
this book.
And
Yeah.
even, like, when people make decisions that disappoint each other, it's not like, "I hate you now and we're not friends anymore." It's like, "I don't like that you did that. Okay, let's move on," And I think
Yeah.
that people do that more often, because you kinda have to, but also, like, when you have a history and a past and trust with each other, you're like, "Okay, I get it. I wish you hadn't have done that, but,
Forgiveness
we're
comes
we're back here
easier.
again." Yeah.
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 Exactly. I think that, it's funny because one of my favorite scenes in any movie in history, have you seen In the Mouth of Madness? The
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that
Mhm.
scene
Yes.
when you're going and anyone that hasn't seen it, you should. Rest in peace, Sam Neill, one of the great
Yeah.
performances in
Yeah.
that movie.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's like a Stephen King
Excuse
kinda
me.
meets H.P. Lovecraft where they're trying to find, the missing writer, and they end up going to this town that you think is fictional, and the way that they get there is this really interesting way. Sam Neill, the main character is asleep, and the sort of, like, agent publishing person is driving, and, like, these weird things happen, and next thing you know, they're at Hobbs End. They're at this, like, creepy village that shouldn't exist. And, like, nothing is, like, kind of, like, recreated that until a couple of
Yearbook.
things in this book
Yes.
where I was like, "Oh, shit." Like, there's nothing it's so, like, everyone's asleep, and it's like, all of a sudden, you're like, "It does not make any sense that we're at this place right now.
And then you're,
What
like,
happened?"
accusatory, like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
Where'd you turn
Yeah.
off? What happened?"
Mhm. It's like,
I
"I didn't
didn't
turn anywhere. The road just suddenly just wasn't there." Yeah.
Yeah, to
Yep.
go
No.
from the Long
Yeah.
Island Expressway to, like, wrong turn Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Yeah.
gas station,
In the
Yeah.
1950s,
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it's really cool. So, like, like you said, it's a highway to hell. They end up in a really, really bad place
literal hell, yep, mhm.
when you were, like, dreaming up the situation they were gonna find themselves in. How did you do that? Because, honestly, there are so many threats that just continue to be thrown at them over and over again. Did you, like,
Mhm.
make a list of what is the worst things that could ever happen to someone, and let me just do all of them to them?
Right.
I what was it? When I'm putting a book together, it often comes to me in, like, bits and pieces. So, if I remember correctly, I dictated the first because I super commute for my day job. So, the story I ended up
That's
dictating.
crazy.
Yeah, I dictated it as I was going, and as I'm dictating, because one, it's very fast, and I really do appreciate it because it allows me to just get all of my thoughts out unvarnished and unfiltered and just, keep moving. It's the fastest way that I've know to be able to write a story. But the I often end up going back and saying, okay, when I start the next session, whether it's the next day or the next week, it's like, okay, I've had time to think about this. Let's change this. Let's add this here. Let's have this start here. And so it comes to me in bits and pieces. And I was very much, when I finally realized or what it is that I wanted to do, I knew that I wanted to do an homage to some of my favorite, like, horror characters and ones that you don't see very often, you
Mm,
know? I mean, obviously, werewolves, you see them, but I wanted to do a take that I just generally had not seen before and
yeah.
make them both kind of like, it's kind of like imagining like a mascot at a baseball game just suddenly running over and trying to kill you. It's something that's so ridiculous that it can't possibly be real. It can't
Mhm.
possibly be deadly, and then it's on you, and it is. So, yeah, the so you have I have my take on I wanted to do my take on werewolves. I wanted to do my take on the skinless man from Hellraiser.
Oh,
Yeah, my take on the Stepford Wives and my take on the Blob.
oh,
And the Blob was something I remember watching with my parents when I was a kid, and I was just very much enamored with this low budget B movie, film that they put that actually worked really, really well. And the Blob is not something that comes along very often. The Stepford Wives, some people talk about them sometimes. The Skinless Man from Hellraiser pops up. Werewolves are obviously more mainstream. But yeah, I really wanted to do my own kind of twisted take on everything that they could face and make it
Mhm.
be personal, make it be physical. It's not just the threat of something coming to kill you. It's the threat of something of you losing a physical portion of yourself.
yeah.
It's yeah,
And you
you're
deliver on that.
you're
You
losing
absolutely
agency.
deliver
Yeah,
on that. It's,
thank you.
as the
Yeah.
person said, there's some, moments of I was picturing this a few times of, like, I wonder what this would look like on a screen. Like, this
Mm,
this would be pretty
thank you.
fucking bloody.
Thank
And
you. Yeah.
yeah, and I think the first part that really got me is I've had a love-hate relationship with, Meatloaf for a while, and that
Okay.
started with a friend of mine that was leaving her cheating boyfriend after 4.5 years, and as she was moving out, instead of trying to save it or admit he was wrong or whatever, he's like, "Hey, can you make this meatloaf one more time before you go?"
Nah,
And, so then I read your book and the scene with the meatloaf in there, and I was like, "I'm done
That's
with."
some Irene level audacity
I
right
was like,
there.
I'm done with meatloaf, dude. I am done with it."
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because I think that, like, that's one of those things, like, there's some really, like, the monsters and, like, big horror, scary things, but to me, like, some of the most unnerving parts of the books are just of the book is, like, for instance, they're going down one side of the house, one side of the street, and then the other side of the street, and
They're
inside
identical.
every single
Mhm.
house, the same dinner is prepared, and the same, like,
mhm.
and
Except one side is
yeah,
turkey,
one side's turkey, one side's meatloaf, and it's like,
Yes.
that's the kinda thing that's just, like, it's so normal and
uncomfortable.
wrong at the same
Mhm.
Yes.
time that, like,
Yes.
it's like that uncanny valley thing, so, like,
Yes, and nobody's around.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
just so much, and so I really did not like that. I do like the dog Boffo that you put in here.
Yes. 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 I had a lot
Seems
of
like
fun with
a
Boffo.
genuinely
Yeah.
good boy.
That's one thing
Mhm.
that I really love to talk about because Bafo first appears in the real world
Mhm.
in a
Yeah.
way, and, like, I just was kind of like, I'm interested, is that something that is going to come up later?
Ooh,
Like because I'm looking at that and I'm like, "Okay, wait, if that could be there, and that, like, does this go back and forth in ways that we don't even know yet after this?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Wow, this is like some, like."
has a lot of potential.
Well, it's like waking up with Freddy's hat, like, it's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, can you bring things
Yes.
back too?" Like, kinda thing where I was like, that freaks me out a little bit, so that was a really cool touch, and it's one of those things that, like, when it happens, you're just like, "Oh," but later on, I was, like, going back to thinking about that, I was like, "Wait a second, why did that
Mhm.
happen like that?" You know?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I
No,
love those kind of Easter eggs.
thank you. Yes. I you will in I've written the second book. So the second book is finished. It's I haven't I have to well, it's at least in rough draft, so I shouldn't say finish and promise something immediately, but no, the second book is written, it's in r and I will be working on that soon to be able to edit and revise it. Because even as I'm keep going, as I'm working on other projects, I have little bits and pieces that come to me of things that I want to change, things that I want to add in and push things forward. But yes, you will see versions of how, like, the what happens when some things enter our world, but some things enter some things are in hell. There's going to be some very interesting differences in between things,
Very
and
nice.
yeah, yeah, you will see that, and yeah, I say this a lot whenever I'm at signings or events, but these characters are hands down my favorite people to torture, and they are, and there's a reason why I spend so much time building on their relationships and making people understand how good of a friends they are, is because they're meant to carry the book or the story across like several versions. Like I had originally imagined a trilogy. Now I think I'm thinking at least of 4 books
Okay.
and a prequel no, and a prequel at least a prequel novella for Clowny McKillbilly. So we will see how
Great.
that goes. Yeah.
That sounds
So
great. I'm excited
yeah.
for that one.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because I he's another favorite of mine, and I really wanted to
he
see
is.
people understand, like, how it is that this wanderer ended up down
Yeah.
here, so,
Well, I
yeah.
love that because, especially slasher movies like the Harbinger, the "You're all doomed" character,
Yes.
and, I'm always they either get killed, like, in some really, like, offhanded aside kind of way, or you just
Mhm.
never literally never see them again throughout the rest of
Yeah.
the movie. So I
Mhm.
love that, he becomes
He's
this.
like, "Technically, I'm supposed to be the harbinger, but I'm kind of,
Yeah,
like,
it's like
fucked
my
up
he
because 'cause I'm
becomes
helping
kind of
you."
a central,
Mhm.
character, and, you think about hell, you think about everything that's going on, and I love that even in a place that seems inherently evil, characters can sort of go against, what they're supposed to be there, which is a
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite exchanges is when he sits down and really breaks down what it his why he's there. He knows deep down exactly why he's there. He's known for a long time, but he hasn't wanted to face that. So that was one of my favorite exchanges, is just having him sit down and openly admit to these very scared, very traumatized kids the real reason for him being the harbinger and what it is that, why he was given that position and
Mhm.
what it actually means.
Well,
And
you
yeah.
have a part where, I think it's Gabby that I don't know if it's Gabby or Becca that asks, like, "Hey, why do you live here? And why do you," and he just starts to, like, and she's like, "Alright, cut the shit. Like, I
Mhm.
know you're
Yeah.
like, be honest with me." And they're very, like, smart in that way too, and he's like, "Alright, fine. Like, I picked this house because it's far enough away from the screams and, like, I could still hear them though." And, like,
Mhm.
it's just more like, they finally got him to the point where he's just like, "Alright, I tried to snow you, but I'm just gonna level with you from this point out." And,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just,
Mhm.
he and his love of Boffo, it's like,
Yes.
okay, there's gotta be he loves a dog, there's gotta be something redeemable about him.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And that's one of the reasons that I like him, is because he's the gentleman who's filled with regret and is willing to at least, I mean, he has to go through, he's dealing with his own trauma. He's dealing with, literal decades of being in hell for however long it is that he's been there. So he's dealing with his own trauma, he's dealing with his own guilt and regret, but he is at least willing to turn and face what he's become and what he's a part of, no matter what it costs him. And that's one of the more redemptive things that I really appreciate
Mhm.
about him.
Me too.
I think the fact that he still is kind of hopeful too, that he's still
True.
kind of looking for a way out. He's still
Yeah.
like, all those things really kind of like are like emotional, like almost too, where it's like to go through so much. And, his journey almost reminds me of like Dante's Inferno in a way, where he's like this wanderer that ended up, there, and kind of all of them in a way for that, although they've been put there for different reasons.
Yeah.
it's a really interesting, like, concept of thinking, because we think of hell as a very, like, tied to religion kind of
Right.
thing,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it kind of opens up that concept a little bit more, like,
Where he's like, "It can
overtly
be different. It
philosophical.
can be different
Yeah.
Yeah.
for each person."
Yeah. 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 And it molds itself because the trauma, hell, suffering, and everything are often very personal. So, and in order to make it hit harder, it has to be something that can change and mold itself to the person that's experiencing it. Because, that old chestnut, no two people experience the same things the same way. So,
Mhm.
as these, well, as I think it's Toby who says that so our or one of the, they say, our version of hell is 1950s white bread
Yeah.
America, and Clowny McHillbilly looks at him and he says, based on looking at all of y'all, and he's looking at it, so all four of them are queer. All of them are very much about being who they are, no matter what anybody else says. And he's like,
Mm.
looking at all y'all, I'd say, yeah, yes,
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's your
yeah.
worst nightmare is being
Yeah.
stuck in a place like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Being stuck in a place that is slowly degrading you, slowly taking parts of you away and turning you into different forms of monsters. And that's yeah, that's it has to be something that conforms itself to you because it's kind of like a face hugger from Alien, you know?
Mhm.
It just wraps itself around you and it makes it
Yeah.
that much harder to be able to pry it off. Yeah.
So I don't wanna, like, spoil anything, but there's a part in the house after Becca rewards herself and allows herself to go to the bathroom.
Mhm. Yeah.
That was a really fun scene of
Mhm.
a lot of creativity of I was like, "Oh, okay, was not expecting a dangerous moment there." It was really fun.
Yeah, yeah. Ain't no water in hell. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
no,
there's some,
that
like,
I
new fears unlocked in a couple
Right?
spots and
That's what I think,
yeah.
Adam. I
yeah,
agree with you. I'm like, I'm gonna be
yeah.
thinking twice about this. But, throughout everything that they battle, I mean, I think because you spent so much time setting up their friendships at the beginning and during the middle, where it's like they're never abandoning each other. They're always like, no, we stick together. Like, doesn't matter. It's like, oh man, they are really fucked up and
Mhm.
I don't know if they're going to live, but it's like, I mean, they've encountered some things where, you know, they test their mental strength and physical strength. And
Mhm.
no matter what, it's like, I, we are going to figure this out. We're not leaving anybody behind.
Yeah,
We're going to figure this out. We're going to do this. And like, they're just these resourceful kids that are like, he's like, yeah, there's no way out. And she's like, well, how do you know? He's like, I've checked them all over the years. They're like, did you check this? Well, somehow Boffo ended up out there. So,
Yeah.
you
yeah,
know, well, that hole probably closed. He's like, yeah, but you don't know for sure. It's like they still have that determination, despite the fact that most of them are pretty injured.
yeah, yeah. And I wanted each of them to be that kind of resourceful because that I mean, what's the old complaint about horror movies? It's like, if I was in this, if horror movie characters had a shred of common sense, they wouldn't be
Yep.
here. And
Yes.
so that's the thing is
It comes across like that too. And I was like, I don't know. I think I just lay down and die at this
That's I
point.
was just gonna say that. Yeah, it's like
I don't know, man. Like, I think I just give in because some of the weird shit, I was like, how do you ever go back to just living the friend life that you ever were? Because,
yeah,
like, after you
yeah,
see the things that Gabby has done, I don't know how you look at them the same way. But I think that
yeah.
Becca would be okay with that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's also something that I'm looking forward to in the second book and going on beyond that because the book itself is a lot of fun. I had a wonderful time writing the first book, but it's less than a day. That's the thing. The
Right.
entire
Okay.
timeline happens in less than a day. So they come out of hell after however many hours that they're in there to find out it's
Mhm.
like, hey, we're, home, we're right in the marshlands by Jones Beach. It's like, this wasn't all that long that we were gone. But it's not a lifetime. It's literally a few hours. It's less than a day that they deal with this. And they don't have time to be able to process anything that they saw, anything that they did, anything that happened to them. So, because when you're in survival mode, you don't have the bandwidth to be able
yeah.
to,
True.
stop and, worry or anything like that. It's like either you get up and get moving or you break down and just don't move. So,
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's the
Mhm.
yeah. And that's one of the things that I look forward to with the next book is getting into
Like,
I've
taking your
already I
time or having more time, like,
yeah,
longer?
talking about I just want to give each of them a chance to actually try to process some of the things that they
Uh-huh,
are dealing with,
okay,
or at least you'll see how it is that they're trying to deal with it. And like
okay.
the working title I have for it right now is Party of a Lifetime 2, the sequela. And I don't know, I was looking for different ways of saying, the sequel or, something that comes after it and everything. And I was just messing around. I just wasn't sure what it was that I really wanted. And I knew I wanted it to be kind of funny, but also kind of odd. And as I was Googling, I literally Googled this and I hit on the word sequela. And it's a word for the aftermath of an illness. And yeah. So that was, and I'm like, sold. That's
Yeah.
perfect. That's
Well, that
exactly what I'm
fits
looking
pretty
for.
perfectly, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because everything that they've been through, now in the second book, you get to see the aftermath. How are they, how are they dealing
They
with it?
definitely
What
had some illnesses, I'll tell you
yeah,
that.
exactly. How are they dealing with it? What are they choosing to do? Can they go back to their old lives? And that's my idea is to set this like a year later to get them an idea as to what it is that they've been dealing with, how they're doing, what they're doing, and what they're going to do next. That's my whole thing.
Mhm.
So yeah.
So you think this'll be a little bit of, like, grief horror?
I don't know, honestly. I know at least that it's going to be very, very visceral in terms of what's going to happen, and it's taking the injuries and the body horror up a notch as well.
Damn,
And
really?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
He's like,
because
"Yeah, absolutely."
yeah, yeah. So it's taking the injuries and the body horror up a notch, and the it's each of them trying their best to hang on to each other and hang on to themselves while knowing that there's really no way of going back. They have to not make amends. They have to make a reckoning with what happened to them
Yeah.
and find a way to fix it. Even if they have to, to save a friend, to save their own sanity, to try to have some way of some closure of being able to return to their own lives. And
Mhm.
so
I think it
you
would
get to
be
see, yeah,
hard. Yeah. Even after surviving, it would be really hard to live in a world where you know someone can do this,
yes,
to you.
yes,
Essentially, like, okay, so how do you find out? Where do you go to do this? Like, at any point, if someone's mad at me enough, they could do this to me. And then,
hmm
two, what would there be a line that was drawn that I would ever be willing to do this to someone else? And,
hmm
like, that just raises some really interesting moral questions there.
Mhm.
it does, yeah,
Now
and
speaking of the mean girl
yeah,
side that you were thinking of, you do have a kind of a mean girl in here, Stephanie. Does
yes,
she would she be potentially showing up in the next book?
yes, she will, yes, so
Perfect. Because she's
yes,
underdeveloped, like, she's, like, got more that I wanna know about her.
Yeah.
yes, yes. You will see more of her, and you will see more of your favorite characters. And yes, like I said, these are hands down my favorite characters to torture. They're some of my favorite people,
That's so funny every
and
time.
yeah, and I love it. And yes, I'm looking forward to digging into the way that they are trying to survive and the way that they're trying to move forward. And that's going to carry things forward into the next couple of books.
Well, one thing that's interesting, I think about like nightmares that I have and things, when your family, your loved ones, yourself are in danger and
hmm
being attacked. And it's sort of like where is that like point of no return for the amount of injuries that you like have sustained or your loved one has sustained. And it's
Yeah.
like, when you're in this, world, hell, does it work the same way? It seems to not that in terms of like people still being alive when in the real world they would not be anymore, and it kind of makes you question, "If I get out of here, am I going to still be sustaining these injuries?" All that kind of stuff, and then also it's like, when is it? Because there's times where they're like, "Oh, we need to help this person, we're gonna take them with us." It's like, when is it too late and you don't know? And it's like, again, it's just bringing up all of these things that, like, it's really painful, like, mentally, not only just physically what's happening to them, but sort of
Mhm.
like going from, "I'm going to the beach," to, you know, or,
I now have to drag a
nothing's
friend,
happening, but, limbs are being lopped off or whatever it is, I'm being attacked by these things, and it's
Mhm.
like, it really is so nightmarish, and seeing the way that they react to it, I think is really realistic, and I think, like you said, people would say, like, "Okay, that's probably what I would do. I don't know if I could do any better than what they do in these
Yes.
situations." And I
Yeah.
think the other thing that really can be frustrating is in horror is, like, they'll find a dead body, like, drained of blood, and a grave will be empty, and they're like, "I wonder what's going on. I don't know." Like, and it's like, I love that these characters, like, really, really quickly are like, I think we're kinda fucked. We've gotta figure out what's going on here,
Yes.
And it's not
Yes.
just
Yes.
like, "Oh, we took a wrong turn. Let's, figure this out. Oh, let's go, ask everybody around here and, split up," and all those things that you like, they're
Mhm.
not making those
No, they're
decisions.
not. They're very
No.
smart about it, and
Yeah.
as we talked about being kids of a certain age, I love that TV show MacGyver, and
Mm.
there is a part
Yes.
where
Mhm.
they MacGyver some shit that was fantastic, and I was like, "I love it." Very, very smart. I was like, "Hell yeah." The way to use your brain.
Yeah, oh, are you talking about in mechanic
Yeah.
fixing the vehicle?
Mhm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
what a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
scene that is. I love.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Because I love one of the
Couldn't
things
think of
that
how
I
to say that
absolutely
without
love.
giving away. Yes,
Yeah.
fixing the
No,
vehicles.
it's fine. No, I totally get it. No, the one of my favorite things to do is mix the absurd with the terrifying
Mhm.
because the often what we end up having to do, even in our normal lives, just to be able to get through the day, is often absurd.
Yeah.
Absurdity is just part of life. I super commute for a day job where I literally just work on my laptop. I could
Yeah,
be
I
home.
I gotta tell you, I gotta hear more about this. I was gonna ask you this at the end again, but what okay, can you just aside for Adam, do you know what that means?
It's, like, extremely long, right? Like,
No, like,
Yeah.
though he's probably on a plane.
plane or
Okay.
train, how do you
Like,
Let's see. How
how
do I? Yeah.
because it's usually, like, you might go from, like, New York to Atlanta.
Okay. No, no, actually I go from Delaware to Virginia. So I drive. Yeah, I drive because I've Googled
Okay.
this to see what it is, how long it would take, for to like a train or something like that. People have asked me, taking a train and stuff like that. And it would take me twice as long. I would
mm,
literally be spending more time in the car than I would be in my office. I would have
yeah,
in order if I wanted to if I want I would be spending more time traveling back and forth to the office than I would at the office. If I wanted
yeah,
to actually get like a full 8 hours of sleep, I would have to fall asleep in my car before I pulled it into the driveway.
Wow,
So,
that's crazy. Well,
yeah,
I watched
so
this guy on Reels, and he was, like, leaving from Philly, he's like, "I'm flying into Atlanta," and he, like, showed and he only does it, like, 2 times out of the week, but I mean, he to your point, he was like, "I'm on my laptop most of the time, I don't even know why I have to be in this office," but yet there he
mhm.
is, so
Yeah, yeah. No, I do Delaware to Virginia every day, Monday through Friday. So
really?
it's yeah, yeah. It's like a 5 to 6 hour road trip back and forth. Sometimes I actually last week actually when we were supposed to catch up, I had left. I was put in to leave work early because if I hadn't, I would never have made the appointment. So I am put in to leave a couple of hours early at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was going to when you guys wrote me in the morning saying, "Okay, can we reschedule?" Fine. I'm like, well, there's no reason for me to go home, but then there's also no real reason for me to stay in the office at the moment. So I left at 2 that afternoon, and because of traffic accidents and just people just not knowing how to drive, I left at 2. I didn't get home until 6. So,
That's
and that was
crazy.
yeah, and that was after I had to drive like 2.5 hours in the morning to be able to get there. So yeah,
Do
yeah.
you audiobook it at all when you're driving?
I do like I said, I do dictating sometimes, that helps me
No, but I mean,
sometimes to
like,
be
just
able
for
to
pleasure,
write, but
do you listen to
yeah.
audiobooks when you're not writing?
I listen to more podcasts than anything else. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Like, I actually just listened to, The Gentleman from Hell earlier this morning, the latest episode from Gentleman of Hell. That's a excuse me, a favorite of mine. I do love that I do love the podcast. The Left Right Game got me through a lot.
Uh,
I love the Left Right Game. My favorite is Dungeons and Daddies. It
mm,
is yeah. It is an absolute balls to the wall, just as they call themselves, as they say that Dungeons and Daddies is a rowdy, horny, violent podcast for grown-ups. So
I love
it's
it.
yeah, and they say that, it's, Dungeons& and Daddies, not a BDSM podcast. It is their take on Dungeons& and Dragons, and it
Amazing.
is yeah, it's violent, it's funny. This season, I'm listening to the 4th season right now, and I've laughed until I cried several times just this season alone. So it's
Amazing.
yeah, yeah. So I'm
Sounds
a
sounds
big fan of
dangerous when I get to
podcasts.
that way and I'm driving and I
Mhm.
can't keep my eyes open. Gets a little dicey there.
When you're
Yeah.
laughing so hard
Yes.
because yeah,
Yes, that's happened to me before.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I one time I have to take several precautions as I'm throughout the day just to make sure that I'm awake, enough before I head home. And because I ended up waking up in the middle of traffic once. As I was driving, I woke up and I was halfway in between two lanes, and it was only for a second. I didn't realize it was that one of those moments where you don't realize that you're asleep, and then suddenly it was only for like a second. Thankfully, no one was, close to me at the time,
yeah,
but it's terrifying. You realize it's like, all of this could have ended, in like a heartbeat if things had gone,
Mhm.
just a little bit more wrong. So yeah, I'm very tired a lot of the time. And so
God.
yeah,
How
I'm
long have
very,
you been
very
doing
tired.
that, Henry?
Since January of 2025. So
Wow. Wow.
give you an idea as to why it is that I that I suddenly just started needing to have to do this all this time. So, yeah, the no, my job is 100% remote. Before all of this, I was home most of the time. I would take a trip in once a week, just for financial purposes, because of like where my job is set versus where my house is. There's a financial difference, salary difference between it.
hmm
So once a week, I could handle that. I could deal with that. Now it's every day, and I just try to squeeze in some family time. When I get home, play with my daughter when I get home. Scarf down some dinner. I literally throw together some clothes for the next day, read to my daughter before I go to bed and before she goes to bed, and then I just kind of collapse for the night and try to get some rest. So
Tell you what, that is
So the highway to hell is
I was
personal.
that's what I was just gonna say. I was like, I say that politely.
But yeah, so well, you still get a lot of events and things in because seeing you're at Philadelphia, different things. How has that been? Has that been nice to be able to sort of change up the routine and kind of do some cool things involving this work?
it has. It has, and I'm not gonna, say anything bad about anything or anybody that I've met. I've met wonderful people. I've been in wonderful stores. I've had a great, great time doing it. It's just it comes at a cost because the time that I spend going back and forth to the office, it means that in order to do this, I got to take time away from my family. So, because that's the only other way that I'm able to pull this off. So, my wife is very, very understanding and very accommodating, but it's one of those things that I don't want to stress it too much. I try to I packed June with a number of events almost every weekend in June, and I don't have much for the rest of the summer. I have one more thing coming up in August, and then the rest is in the fall because family time for me is beyond premium. So I've Philadelphia. I had a wonderful time being there in Philly. Let me see, working with Brackish Books, working with Huxley and Hero for my book launch in Wilmington
Mhm.
for a couple of days after the book released. That was fabulous. I was supported by a number of wonderful other writers and publishers who came out to be able to support me that night. It was fabulous. I had a wonderful time, but and I absolutely love the live events and doing things. I did one at the book plate just recently in Maryland. That's a place I've been wanting to return to for a long time. It was where I did one of my first book signings for my first book. But yeah, it's something that I have to be careful, very conscious of how much time it is that I'm taking because I'm already losing so much time with my family,
Yeah.
and for no good reason. And I
I
yeah,
love that you have been able to figure out how to, like, hack the writing though. Like,
Yeah.
hack your drive so that you can do the dictation.
That's really interesting because that's now the second person that's told us that they kinda do something like that. David Simmons, the writer, he also very similarly does that, and, he says it's because, he has small kids. He
mhm,
works all day too, where it's like, that's just makes the most sense, to be able
yeah,
to get your thoughts out there because, like, when you're doing those kinds of things, by the time you get home, I'm sure it's gone,
Oh,
yeah,
out
yeah.
your head, so,
yeah,
And for someone
yeah,
who drives a lot too, not nearly like you,
yeah,
Henry, but,
mhm,
you do a lot of thinking.
but when I
yeah,
had to drive every like, up to when I would travel out of market, like 2.5 hours, and then I would drive back in the day, I see what you're saying, like, I could do that once a week, not every day, but I got some good audiobook time in, or you catch up with somebody or,
Mhm.
whatever, but
mhm,
you also, like, if you have to answer any emails, forget it, like, can't there's a lot of stuff you can't get done.
no, no,
Well, I mean, I guess you can, but you know what I mean? Like,
Without adding to your commute time, like, "Oh, I'm gonna stop and do this or that."
yes,
Yep.
yes, yes.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
man,
yeah.
well, I really, what is the, if you had to guess, I know you said it's not ready yet, but is this a 2027 release that you're thinking?
I'm hoping, yes, that's at least my plan. So I want to work on my goal. I've been able very very lucky has been able to publish a book each year for the last 3 years. So my goal was to publish a book each year at the very least, publish something, at the very least. So my hope
Super
is to be
cool.
able to get this for 2027 and keep going for each consecutive year until I'm out of ideas at least for this series of books. So
Well,
yeah,
we can't wait for the next one and hope to have you back on to talk about that.
thank
But
you.
this was an absolute delight, and, thank you so much for speaking with us, and again, everybody, Party of a Lifetime, it's available now, check it out if you want a glorious, trip through hell. Alri
Okay. Have a great night, Henry.
Yes.
Bye bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all so much. Enjoy yourselves.
Yep.
Take care. Thank
Get
you.
some
Bye.
sleep.
Bye. Oh, thank you.